Hello, everybody. I'm Scott Neal, and today I'm going to talk about my journey to become a veteran entrepreneur. I'm a graduate of the Veterans Florida um, Entrepreneurial Development courses in 2015, and hopefully you can be inspired by my journey about myself and my friends and how we started this business called Horse Soldier Bourbon. Well, let's talk about the obvious, and that's the horse soldiers. In 2001, I think we were all involved with 9/11 in one aspect. For us, I was part of 5th Special Forces Group at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and we received, just like anybody, the news of the 9/11 attacks. But within a few days, our entire Special Forces Group was notified that we were selected to be prepared to go behind the lines of Afghanistan. So all in all, we linked up with Mujahideen fighters. Different teams went into different sections of Afghanistan. We rallied the Mujahideen fighters, and the typical Special Forces mission by, with, and through. We were fortunate to raise a horse cavalry of 3,500 riders and 1,000 infantry that basically within 90 days led to the defeat of the Taliban government, its army of over 50,000 fighters supported by 1,000 hardcore Al-Qaeda fighters. We then pursued bin Laden into the mountains of Tora Bora, and unfortunately he was able to escape. But for us as a group, we came home by about April and May, and there was no parades. Nobody really known what we'd done. And we just went back to our lives until October of 2002, when we were called up once again to be prepared to be inserted behind the lines into Iraq. And of course, there's a lot of participation and a lot of stories that are still untold about us training either with the Kurds or us going into central Iraq looking for weapons of mass destruction, or assisting the Army and the Marine Corps as strategic reconnaissance as they invaded from the south. The Green Berets are a little different. We're known as the quiet professionals. Yes, there is a movie, 12 Strong. There's a documentary, Legion of Brothers. There's several books out, but actually we didn't participate in much of any of that. The only one that we did participate was the Legion of Brothers, and we just wanted to tell the story ourselves and not have it filtered through an author or through a screenwriter. And finally, this really is a story about transition. It doesn't matter who you are, what rank you were, right? What position you held in the service. Everybody goes through transition. We wanted to live the American dream we've been defending. And for a lot of us, especially in the special ops community, the only opportunity was to go back to government contracting. And a few of us tried it, but this really wasn't something we could build wealth with, right? Something we could give to our family and create a legacy separate from the military. And we wanted to do it with our families as well. A lot of us were just tired of leaving home and going somewhere, and our families didn't even know what was going on. So I'm going to take you through the journey of horse soldiers, and I'm going to show you our very first video.
Part of what you really miss when you get out of the military is having mission. That's one of the things that we really appreciated. And we have a mission now, and that mission is to make great whiskey, but it's also to build something for ourselves and our families, and to do it together.
This distillery was needed by us. It gave us all reason, a purpose to be together.
Coco and I and Elizabeth rode through Yellowstone on horseback. It was kind of that journey of a lifetime that, come back to nature and just really relax as a veteran. We said, hey, let's start a business.
Got a call from Scotty and said, hey man, do you want to learn how to be a distiller and open up a company?
And they're like, what, make whiskey? Are you kidding me? And the thought of it excited everybody. And that's when we started our journey to actually learn about how to make whiskey.
Once again, like every SF team that we've been on, we didn't really know what we were doing ahead of time, but that didn't stop us. We went to schools, we figured it out, we traveled across the world.
We went at it like we would kind of an operation where we just studied every aspect. Everything about the barrel and the whiskey and the glass and the bottle, your production line, your labeling line.
As Green Berets, we were very good at operations. We were very good at coordinating things, very good at adapting.
Truthfully, I'm involved in every aspect of the company, designing our current label or doing all the interior design work of our new distillery.
We built our urban still house in St. Petersburg, Florida. Very proud of it.
The spirit of the Horse Soldier brand is the commitment, the dedication, the sacrifice that all of us have experienced throughout our military careers.
The bourbons we're making are award-winning. They're authentic. And our story is not made up. It's a real story.
We're not just a story, we're history.
And most importantly, we're all American. We choose to make our glass in the United States, not in China or Mexico. We choose to build here at home and manufacture here at home and hire here at home. And we take great pride in that.
It's blood, sweat, and tears that goes into every bottle.
We couldn't have a reputation of putting something in the bottle that we didn't like to drink.
We don't want you to buy our whiskey because we're military. We want you to buy our bourbon because it's good.
A lot of people recognize us for who we were, right? Our past, our military service, and we want to show them who we are today.
Bourbon is synonymous with the great state of Kentucky. Many of us spent decades living here at Fort Campbell, Louisville, throughout the great Commonwealth of Kentucky. So it just seems natural that we come home here.
Making Horse Soldier bourbon here in the state of Kentucky is the natural progression of our business growth.
All the fine bourbons, all the best brands, all the history and knowledge that came from this industry comes from Kentucky. So if you want to be important and you want to be a player, to the world, they expect good bourbon to come from Kentucky, and that's what we want too.
The future for us, at least, we hope, will be that for generations to come, people are going to respect and admire what we started.
So let's talk a little bit more about 9/11. I know there's a lot of curiosity. You look today and all you think about is the planes hitting the towers. And really what you see here is the day after 9/11. And that's the part I like to remember because I remember the country coming together. And this image right here is actually from a former Marine, Detective Rich Miller of the NYPD Emergency Services Unit. And he wanted to put a flag up in the middle of Ground Zero, not only as a symbol to everybody else who could see it on the outside, but as they were bringing and hopefully recovering people in the debris, that was the first thing they would see. And I think America needs a lot of that kind of sense of togetherness today. And that's what kind of carried me through as we started deploying into Afghanistan. Here are some old photos. I think everybody's has their own team photos or their unit photos. They just, we were very young at the time. If you think back in the military, 32 seemed like an ancient age, but that was the team's average age. We were all married at the time. We all had kids, and we were asked to do this nearly impossible mission.
At 0200 hours, the unarmed MH-47 drops ODA 595 at LZ Albatross. Through the night, Tiger II waits for General Dostum. He is known as a brutal warlord who has made and broken alliances with many factions. What will the morning bring? The answer comes in a burst of hoofbeats.
First, about 20 horsemen came galloping up. They're armed to the teeth, looking pretty rough. The heavy beards, your typical Soviet small arms. It's what they possessed: light machine guns, AK-47s, RPGs, and about 10 minutes behind them, another 30 horsemen arrived with General Dostum.
To their relief, they receive a warm welcome and follow the horsemen to Dostum's headquarters, a 4-hour ride deep into the mountains. Only one member of ODA 595 is an experienced rider.
It was an incredible, we were going up stuff that, a foot wide, you're 1,000 feet up on a cliff that you knew if you fell, you were dead.
This was our first chapter in the Wild Wild West events that we would participate in every day.
Here's actually one of the link up photos. When you insert behind the lines, you have a big decision. It's the hardest thing you could ever do is link up with your resistance forces. You don't know exactly who they are. Do they even speak your own language? Do you wear a uniform? Do you go in plain clothes? Here you actually see the warrant officer, Bob, has his hand on his pistol. because you don't know how the receptions are going to be at the time. But what we soon found out is actually the size of the Taliban force we would be facing. And this Taliban army of the North basically had all the leftover Soviet armament, from their tanks to their rocket launchers, artillery, anti-aircraft gun, and they were using that to go from village to village to basically overtake small villages and make them capitulate to their strong religious views. Here's what we had. We had a group of resistance fighters that didn't speak each other's languages, that spent more time fighting each other than the Taliban. They were very proud and simple people. They relied on Pashtun Wali, which is a code of ethics and revenge and honor and shame. And how do you communicate to people like that? And basically, we had to share our stories and tell them what had happened to America, and it was their same common enemy, the Taliban, and we should fight together to defeat them. We provided command and control. On the left-hand side, you see Mark on a horse. Mark actually grew up on a working cattle ranch in Kansas, knew horses very well. He studied all the Civil War cavalry battles as a young ROTC officer before joining Special Forces. He would ride 10 to 14 hours in the saddle, going from village to village, basically telling America's story. So it really gave that kind of sense of purpose to the villagers why we were there. Also on the other side, you see Bob, the warrant officer, became logistics. It was a heavy issue, right? All the food for an emerging army, all the equipment, all the bullets. We had to supply the Afghans with even shoes and boots for the oncoming winter. Millions and millions of pounds of parachuted supplies would come in every week to outfit this Mujahideen army. This is what we also provided, and that was close air support from our air, from B-52s to F-16s and F-18s that came from carriers off in the Persian Gulf. And as you can see with this slide here, very dramatic effects. These people had been fighting a mechanized infantry and armor sections and had no luck over 10 years. And instantly it changed when you add close air support and you're able to pinpoint command bunkers and take out POL and distribution sites for the Taliban.
Cap. Yeah. D. Donald Rumsfeld just sent you an email and it ain't a good one. What's he say? When are you going to get off your ass and get to Mazar? Jesus Christ. You know what? Write this back to him. Sir, let me explain the reality on the ground. Right. I'm advising a man how to employ horse-mounted cavalry against T-72 tanks, mortars, machine guns.
The tactic, I think, became outdated with the invention of the Gatling gun. They've attacked with 10 rounds of AK-47 ammunition per man.
Lisa, get in here.
The snipers having less than 100 rounds, little water, and less food.
The letter's too well written. No, it can't be Hal. That's right.
But listen, whoever does this thing's got to understand this is different than what we've been doing, all right? You're on your own, no reinforcements, no extraction, nothing. I can't order anyone to do this. Someone's got to volunteer. I'm in.
Don't you ever ask. I'll follow you anywhere.
12 Strong, the declassified true story of the horse soldiers. Experience it in IMAX, rated R.
Once again, it's pretty honoring to have a movie made about all of our actions, but in reality, nobody really participated in the movie. It got some things right, and it missed a lot of the things that you'd hope the world would understand. And it really was the Afghans who fought these battles that charged the tanks head on. And as Green Berets, we worked with them and we helped them. And it was an honor just to be a part of that small experience. This image here is actually a location of where all pieces of World Trade Center were buried in different battle field locations. As the war kind of expanded in the first couple of weeks, other small teams of Green Berets were sent in. There was various Army Ranger missions in Delta Force and SEAL Team 6. It truly was an interagency collaboration, a multinational effort, because pretty soon we started establishing forward bases in Kandahar, in Kabul, and other locations around Afghanistan. And that's really what broke the Taliban's back in their command and control and pushed Al-Qaeda into a small area, and finally bin Laden just barely escaping into Pakistan. We would do other missions. We would fly further behind the lines, and we would capture Taliban leadership and Al-Qaeda leaders, so the next morning they couldn't rally their troops as they went in the battlefield. And if you really understand Afghanistan, if you can get their soldiers to think that their leaders are cowards, it was almost the best psychological warfare that you could do. This is Ground Zero today. If you haven't been there, I'd recommend you go. It's a stark contrast of what it was in that first image that I've shown you, and shows you the resiliency of America.
It's not one of those.
It's like next year.
You know, what's amazing to me is we're not dead. You know, because they don't put things out like this unless you're dead. Yeah.
So there's a difference between a monument and a memorial. That's why it's a monument, not a memorial.
So that's who we were, right? We're a bunch of friends that served together. It was a very extraordinary time in our lives. We were young and capable. We were highly trained. And then one day we left. And, you know, we drifted in and out of various jobs. I think all veterans do that to kind of find their way and direction. And we knew we wanted to do something together, and we wanted to have purpose, and we wanted to be excited about going to work every day. And we started this business 6 years ago. We called it American Freedom Distillery. Today, we've grown to over 70 employees, to including a sales staff. Our product is distributed in 12 states, and we now have a national distribution partner. And we really consider ourselves really an activation company, because we started looking in our business as different areas of function, from production to marketing and branding to, once again, telling the story and selling the brand. We partnered initially with an existing distillery that had capacity. It's called contract distilling. We didn't have the money to build a $15 million facility that would start making bourbon. So we asked them if we could come on the weekends, and we would fly on Allegiant Air for $59.95 and stay in Airbnbs, and we would work usually 18-hour shifts making bourbon and just putting it away because I had to sleep. Today, we have over 11,000 barrels that are aging. It's almost like a bond material where it cost us so much money to make, and every day that barrel ages, it's worth another dollar on top of it. So it's very valuable by the time you age your bourbon in and pour it into the bottle and sell it at retail. Right now, we're in works. We've bought 225 acres in Kentucky, and I'll talk about it later, where we'll have our own 3 million gallon capacity. That'll be our forever home a legacy we can give to our kids. Now, how did we learn how to make whiskey? We had no clue about distilling, the whiskey business, branding, any of this. Is we traveled together, and just like our Special Forces mission, everybody took a piece of the business and really had knowledge dominance. We read everything. We talked to a lot of people. We interviewed bartenders and bar owners, warehouse and delivery relationships. We talked to veteran-owned distilleries and commercial publicly traded distilleries and warehousemen. All up and down the chain, we sort of developed this question and answer session, and everybody was really open. We trained in Scotland, in Ireland, in Cuba, in Tennessee, in Indiana, in Kentucky, and even Mexico. That's how far we went to really understand this business. There's three things to remember: is you keep your business very simple. And we had to do it for our brand. Why? Because just like in Special Forces, by, with, and through, ultimately other people tell our story for us to the customer, right? Your bartender tells it, your liquor store owner tells it, your families and friends who love the brand tell your story. So we had to keep it very, very simple. And this is what we came up with. We're authentic. We're not a marketing company. We weren't developed in some kind of Madison Avenue super session. The brand has to make people believe that you're part of this brand, right? But we also had to be ultra premium. Sometimes you look at your branding and it's very common and it doesn't stand out. And we said to ourselves, and especially the wives, they wanted something beautiful, right? Something to be proud of. And that took a long time for us to find that right mix of authenticity and a beautiful design and brand. We do have the statue at ground zero. What we didn't want to be is a military red, white, and blue, eagle, claw, everything. We wanted it to be a little bit more subtler. And so our bottles tell a great story. And it's even better when somebody else tells that story for us. All American, as you get into the business world, you're faced with, how much money do you have and how do you start acquiring your raw materials? And do you buy in China or Mexico? What do you outsource? Everything about our bottle, from the glass to the label, everything's made in America, but one thing, and that's our cork. You still can't get cork anywhere else but in Portugal, right? So these are the decisions we went through. And finally, it's bourbon. The consumers, they admire your military service a little bit, right? But they're suspect on how you know how to make great whiskey. So we had to enter a lot of contests. And so we started sending samples in and we started getting a lot of acclaim. And what that does, it helps validate your brand and your efforts, even to the most skeptical bourbon and whiskey connoisseur. These awards are world-class, right? And you just don't send it in. It's not a third grade, everybody gets a ribbon contest. These are very brutal judging sessions that go through this. There's one more thing about our brand that's very unique, and it came about because we wanted our own unique bottles, and we soon found out that just have a bottle mold made to create your own bottle was $35,000. And at the time, we didn't even have that much money for that. Then they told us we needed 6 of them. So we thought, and we asked the question, why is the bottle mold that expensive? And they started explaining that it was a type of steel and what they had to do to forge it and put it together to hold that high heat. And they gave us a brilliant idea. And this is how we worked ourselves through the solution. Remember, you can negotiate your pricing at any time. You could talk to the people, just relate to them on a human level and ask them to help you solve your problem.
The towers had fell when I was in high school, and I waited a year, made up my mind, and then went in.
I was one of the original soldiers that went in on the early days after the 9/11 attacks.
Every bottle that's going to go through that mold will have been touched by World Trade Center steel. as we say, kind of forged in fire, kind of like we have been throughout our careers.
It makes it so much more important for us, so much more real for us, so much more of an honor for us.
This is the American dream. I mean, no ifs, ands, or buts. We've got our bottle molds made out of ground zero steel. We've got bourbon made by the guys that were on horseback over in Afghanistan.
With the statue of the horse soldiers in New York at ground zero, like we all feel kind of like we're connected to it.
Each one of these bottles is its own little memorial.
All good journeys have a beginning, middle, end. They're based on history. Our story is based in history. We continue to make history, and we continue to be part of history.
We have one selection called Commander Select. You know, we're asked quite often, do we donate to veterans charities? And the answer is always yes. And you do it in multiple ways. Sometimes you can do it with your time. Sometimes we give people a time off to attend military and veterans events to tell the stories. We have a bottle here called Commander Select. It actually costs $595 at retail, and the funds and proceeds are used to support the statue at Ground Zero. Also, we've done whiskey and war stories, sort of like what you're seeing today at different large veterans fundraisers, and these bottles have gone for up to $10,000 to $15,000 that supports a local veterans charity and effort. Right now, I'm in the team room. You know, we're special forces. We tend to like our own private space. But, you know, we have consumer facing, and that is the Urban Still House here in St. Pete, Florida. It's over by the Tropicana baseball field. We wanted a beautiful space, a restaurant that we could showcase not only what we saw around the world when we visited all these locations, but a place where you could have a great meal. We have a wood fire grill that we actually crush up our barrels and use to cook meats and fresh caught fishes. We host a tremendous amount of events here. As a matter of fact, I've got a veterans fundraiser tonight. And we have a beautiful tasting room where we just teach people about bourbon and how it's made. This is the future of our brand. It's a $160 million project. It's going to take 3 years to finally construct. Just like the military, we had to send out bids and have boards, and finally selected designers and architects and engineers. We work with the state of Kentucky on tax incentives and tourism tax dollars to put this big package together, because we see this brand as something that's going to be around for the next 100 years. In the bourbon space, a lot of veterans came home and just went back to work. They went back to the mills, or they went back to their small dealerships. They went back into small town America, and they got busy making a living. And that's what we're doing here, is we're actually building a farm as much as a distillery for everybody to come visit. As you can see, we're going to put a lot of energy and effort, and we'll be able to produce for our brand for the next 100 years. So really, that is the story of Horse Soldier Bourbon. I know there's always a lot of questions. How'd you do it? Why'd you do it? Where'd you get the money? Feel free to reach out. This is the beginning. It's a curiosity on how to start your business, right? We had the same thing. We had to learn with each other. We spent a lot of nights reading to become smart, you know, and understand the business. Remember, at the end of the day, you make something and you sell it for product or profit. You have a product that you're competing against others with, but it's all achievable. The American dream still exists for how hard you work for it. And with that, thank you very much, and I hope to meet you all pretty soon.